thank you for coming, my non-234s. And I see like friends of students, some other people. So this is Evelyn Tribole. She's going to tell you all about herself and what she does and her background, but she really wants this to be an interactive Q&A kind of discussion. So raise your hands, ask her questions. She's very friendly. She'll tell you. She talks a lot. She's good at talking. Yeah. So, feel free. Get comfortable. Okay. I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. Can everyone hear me all the way to the back? Wow. Okay. Well, I thought what I would do, and Dariana said, "Oh yeah, you got to do that." I'm going to tell you my pre-background, and that is I was a student here, undergraduate and graduate. I ran cross country and track. Woo! Yes. And oh, it gets better though. It gets better. This was so long ago that actually I had to go one step further back. In high school, they didn't have girls track. I'm a Title IX baby, meaning they didn't fund girls track in cross country back then. So I ran the boys team. They didn't even make girls clothing back then, so I ran in boys clothing and boys shoes. And I'll never forget the first time I had a girl's pair of running shoes. Oh my God, I thought I was running on marshmallows. I was like, what? Okay. And then after I graduated my master's degree here, I actually went on to qualify for Olympic trials in the marathon for women. The first time they let women run that distance. Before that, it was only 1,500 meters. And so the reason why I'm giving you that background is just to kind of give you a feel how I even got started. I wasn't even a nutrition major when I came here. I was PE because I wanted to be a coach, and I did. And then there were all these politics going on, and there was no funding for teachers. I thought, I better look at changing majors here. I'm not going to have a job. And I was in the student union, and I was eating lunch, and I was walking by this table, and I see this nutrition book. I go, huh. So I waited for the student. Turned out she was president of the Student Dietetic Association. I said, can you major in this or something? Anyway, I seriously told her. And so I took a nutrition class, and thank God it was great, because I imagine what if it wasn't? Wouldn't that be terrible? But anyway, changed majors, da-da-da-da, here I am. Okay. So I got really interested in nutrition in terms of I was always interested in what can I eat to make me run faster and longer, and all that kind of stuff. And the reason I'm also giving you the other kind of athletic background is because I'm used to kind of bucking the trend or blazing a trail or whatever you want to call it. And I'm comfortable with controversy as long as there's good data behind it to stand on, okay? So what I wanted to do today was kind of give you just a brief background, although it's not so brief because it's kind of long, on my career. And then I want to really open it up for questions, because to me the real issue is well, so what? For you guys, how does this, in fact, it was in this class, I think they called it 234 or 232. This is a true story. As you all know, you're all, most of you here nutrition majors, okay? You got to take a lot of prerequisites before you even get into the real nutrition, And I remember thinking, oh my God, what if I don't like it? And I was in this 234-32 class, and I was getting really depressed as one professional after another came in and said, oh my God, I don't know. And someone came in who just brightened up the whole idea of what a dietitian can be. Back then it was very traditional. The track was you graduate, you get your RD, and you work in a hospital. And there was a consultant dietitian that came in who was in private practice. And it's that's what I'm going to do. It's part of the reason, by the way, I do like paying back to my profession, paying it forward, whatever you want to call it, because over the years, especially when I was getting started, I had a lot of kind professionals give me some great advice along the way. So it's one of the reasons why I'm here. I have a passion for what I do, and if you remember nothing else, my big take-home message to you is really find what your passion is. Not what pays the best, not what someone thinks is the best, but what you just really love, because then it's not going to matter about the money. And here's the funny thing about the money. It ends up coming, so, It's kind of cool in that way. Yeah, okay. All right, so in terms of my background, as I was going through what I was doing, it wasn't like I had this very thought-out plan about, well, first I'm going to get my clinical experience for a year, and then I'm going to go into private practice, and then I'm going to write some best-selling books, and then I'm going to work for a movie picture studio thing. Those things actually really happened, but I didn't plan them, okay? So, in short, though, what did happen is, and I feel strongly about this for you, any of you here who plan to go into any kind of counseling or any kind of medical-related nutrition, I cannot emphasize enough how important the clinical nutrition is. I had really good training. I was at Memorial Long Beach. Gosh, probably 4 years there as a tech, and then I did like an internship kind of thing there, and went on to work at Cedars-Sinai for about a year. And I did critical nutrition. I just love all that stuff. And to this day, I still use it. And it's one of the, I guess, the weaknesses I see in new dietitians coming out who want to do some training is that their clinical background is really lacking. And this is not a criticism, it's just a guidance for you in terms of if you're thinking those kind of career pathways. The other message I want to really, really hone in on, or that's not even a word, but okay, it is, but words with friends, word welder, okay, those are my games, my abs. Another real key I want you to know is how important it is to keep an open mind, okay? And I'm going to tell you why. It's embarrassing, but it's true. 2 stories. First story is this. Especially when I was getting my master's science degree, I hated the fact that we were in home economics. It was not science in my opinion. I had to take foods classes I had no desire to take. And I had a bit of an attitude. I was polite, but it was like, I'm a scientist. I'm not a scientist, but I don't do food. That was my thing. And I don't know if you still have a foods class here where you learn how to fold napkins and stuff. Let me tell you about folding napkins. In that class, I think it's the same one, we all got to decide what we want to do for our big projects, and I think we had like a mother brunch thing. So I've been working my ass off on chemistry and all these things in the science and higher learning. And my mom comes to this, and the other moms are there too. I was like, oh my God, they look like so-and-so, mannerisms there. But anyway, my mom, what did she tell to her family and our family and brag to her friends? My daughter can fold napkins. So I had a bit of an attitude, but I want to tell you why it's such a good idea to have an open mind, because somewhere along the line, one of my first consulting jobs was for Richard Simmons Anatomy Asylum. He was big in the time back then in fitness, and I was interviewing to be, teaching one of their classes, and they wanted to hire me, but I said, I don't do food, because they had a couple of lessons that you did food, and I go, no windows, no food. And they said, well, we really, really want you, so we'll get someone to do the food for you. It's like, beautiful. So, I'm doing my thing. I think it was the 4th lesson, and the food day comes. I'm there, the food is there. The person did not show up. But I had my food background from Long Beach State, But here's what ended up happening. I had so much fun, I couldn't believe it. And not only did I have so much fun, the attention in the group, because I had food, was unbelievable. And that really was the beginning of changing my ways. Fast forward, I was doing some consulting here in Long Beach for a big medical practice, and I got this idea from a dietitian I trained with at Long Beach Memorial in the cardiac unit, and that's doing recipe makeovers. Now, you might be familiar with that concept, but back then it was kind of unheard of, where you take, someone's favorite recipe and you tweak it and make it healthier. And long story short, I started doing that with my patients. And fast forward, it was a really bad day for me. I was in another practice, and I had 4 no-shows. And if you don't know what no-shows are, these are people who don't have the courtesy to even call to say, I'm not going to make it. And you're there waiting and waiting for someone to show up. It's incredibly rude. And I think it was like the 3rd one. I'm thinking, oh my God, I got to do something with my time. So this is what's good about being naive and ignorant. I called up Shake Magazine, and I pitched them the idea of doing a recipe makeover story. And they liked it. That became a feature, and it was so popular, they asked me to do a column, and I ended up doing that column for 11 years. Now, this is food, okay? And I really liked it. And I had my standard, and my standard was this, that any recipe I would make over, it could not diminish the taste threshold. In other words, it ought to taste good, the textures ought to be good, and you couldn't really tell if it was really that much different. And so that was really a lot of fun. And where this really came to fruition, all this food stuff, was I became a spokesperson for the American Dietetic Association. That's message number 3. You need to get involved, you need to get active in some professional association. It's not just showing up, it's actually doing something. And doing something that you like to do, volunteer for stuff you like to do, not stuff boring. I've never done treasurer stuff because I am horrible with details. I paid someone for those details. So anyway, I get an invitation to go on Good Morning America, and I do. And food, oh my God, they love food and nutrition. And then there's I love this terminology, synchronicity. David Rico is the guy who really made that term popular. And it's about when a convergence of things come together beyond a coincidence. And it's more than just a meant to be kind of thing. So here's what happened. It was an accident. So I don't know if you know this, but national TV is pretty scripted. And by scripted when it comes to news, it's not that you're going to read per se everything line by line, but you already know what the questions are and you have a sense of what the answers are. And I didn't know that until I started doing this. Well, here's what happened. So I did my little segment as a guest, and I was excited. And then there was some technical glitch, and they said, you know what, our next guests, either they didn't arrive or something happened. Can you do another thing for us? And I go, sure. They go, you have 2 minutes of commercial time to figure out what that's going to be. I go, okay. And I just think it's funny. So at that time, I had this really powerful and passionate idea for a book. I actually had a book proposal already in draft stage. I forgot to tell you I'd written another book before then, but that's another story. So anyway, I ended up doing an interview on primal hunger, and the concept being that if you get too hungry, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to eat the house, you're going to kill somebody if you can't get that food. And it's funny, when you do a lot of television or a lot of talks, you kind of know when you've really done really well. And that was like, ooh, that went down. It felt good. Not only it felt good, I got a call that day from a publisher and said, hey, we think you have a book in you. I go, as a matter of fact, I do. Now here's where the passion comes in. They wanted me, so the first book I wrote, this is a side tour. The first book I wrote was called Eating on the Run. I was 27. I was only in RD for like 2 years by that point. And I was shocked that despite my vast knowledge of nutrition, how difficult it was to eat healthy. Because I thought after school it would get easier. You know, get a job and it's just a lot easier, no classes and stuff. But it was harder. And so Eating on the Run was the first book. So this publisher that called me said, we'd like you to write a cookbook on eating on the run. But you know what? My head wasn't there, and I didn't want to do a book on that. And I don't mean to sound rude, but I just didn't want to do that. And I had already done a couple other cookbooks. I'll tell you that story later. So anyway, what ended up happening, because I had this proposal together, and I had an agent at the time, the book went into competitive auction, and it's the best thing that can ever happen. What happens is the publishers are really like, we want you, here's the money, you know. That's the short version of that. Publishing isn't like that anymore, by the way. It's completely changed. Just like the music industry changed with all the MP3 stuff, it's changed a lot now with digital, but it's still alive. So, and then from that, Good Morning America offered me a regular position. I was the first paid national dietitian on a television daytime show. And this is what's really funny. When they made that offer, I forget if it was my second time or it must have been my third time there. It's really weird when you're pregnant, because I happened to be pregnant when they gave that offer. And and that sounds weird. I was married, okay, it's a family. And I was obviously pregnant. I was showing, and I remember looking at the executive producer and said, but I'm pregnant. Thinking that you don't hire pregnant people. I don't know why I was thinking that. Evelyn, if you recall, many of our hosts have been pregnant. We really know how to do this. And so, long story short, signed a contract. In fact, actually, when I finally signed the contract, my baby had been born. Connor was 4 months old at the time. And this is so funny. This is real life enters my career. So I'm supposed to sign this big contract with Good Morning America. I've got a book deal to sign and a television appearance. This is all in 3 days. Connor's 4 months old. I was breastfeeding. Breastfeeding's the way to go. So many reasons I'm not going to talk about it, though. And, so I, would pump. And so my husband, his dad at the time, well, that's another story, but that's a story. My son stopped he wouldn't take the bottle from his dad. So all of a sudden, and by the way, when you're just having kids for the first time, and, this is so terrible. This is story business. I forget what happened. I changed the job, and my insurance wasn't going to go through. I thought, I'm so healthy that I don't need insurance. Well, so anyways, we were kind of broke when all this good stuff started happening, which is good. But all of a sudden, my pediatrician said, you got to take your baby with you. You cannot, and all of a sudden buying 3 tickets to New York. Thank God for frequent, flyer miles. Okay. So, here I was, going to all these meetings, signing contracts, doing appearances, and breastfeeding every 3 hours. And so that was the beginning of the excitement of my career. Actually, it was exciting all along, but the point is, I had a passion all along the way. So, I'm going kind of out of order, but let me do this. It's so funny, I haven't even looked at my notes. Okay. This is embarrassing. I have to always look how many books I've written, but now it's about 8. Okay. I know, huh? So, it's so much fun to get paid for writing as opposed to term papers that you gotta do. It's so different. But it's just as hard. I gotta tell you, it's just as hard. I think it's a little harder actually. So, 8 books to date, and I gotta tell you, here's my funny story. I forget which one. Oh, open mind story. Okay. Number 2 on open mind. First was the cooking food. True story. Okay, one of the books I recently wrote was called The Ultimate Omega-3 Diet. Now, I have to do a sidebar on this story, too, because there's an important part. In publishing, most people don't know, authors don't have much control over what's on the cover, even though this is my, 6th or 7th book or something like that. And my publisher wanted the title to be The Ultimate Omega-3 Diet, and I said, no, I don't want anything to resemble the word diet in terms of dieting, da-da-da-da. And they said, well, how about we do ultimate omega-3 diet, lower your inflammation, increase your mood, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, great, okay. So we agreed. I get the book, big letters, ultimate omega-3 diet, little letters, improve your mood, decrease inflammation. So anyway, that was a story in itself. But the reason I want to tell you about this particular book, it's where almost everything I ever learned in college came to fruition in this book. One of my challenges in life, I've finally gotten to the point where I've dialed this down, but it took 8 books to do it, was to really learn how to write, maintain a private practice, and still maintain a balanced life, okay? I had a good friend that would say, oh my God, you're not writing another book, I'm never going to see you again, you're going to be in your cave. It's like, I know, I got to work this differently. So with this particular book, I got started a lot sooner than I normally would do. I would usually not start a book project until I had a signed contract. You have to do a book proposal, and no matter who you are, even at this stage in my career, I still have to do book proposals, not just only in concept and content. That's really important, but just as important to the publishers is, how are you going to make us money? You got to do a competitive market analysis. What's already out there? And why should you be the person to be writing this book, and why is this any better than stuff that already exists, okay? So I did all of that for the omega-3 book. And the angle on this that was so different was really looking at the background diet, and that is the omega-6 factor and what it does. How many guys know about that stuff? Okay. It's so hot, it's an exciting field. It is. So anyway, I am getting into this research like crazy, and these scientists are so passionate. It's unbelievable. I've never seen such a group of exciting, passionate scientists. And I call my best friend up, who also happens to be a dietitian, and sometimes I'd leave her these messages at midnight. Her ringer was off, so it didn't matter. And she'd call me the next day and go, oh my God, what are you saying? You're speaking another language and all this lipidology stuff. So long story short, it's very complex, all the metabolism, you all know that. So I was trying to wrap my head around the relationship between omega-6 and omega-3. And it has to do with, enzyme kinetics and limitations and all that stuff. Do you know all that stuff? Okay. And it's a hyperbolic relationship. I even went on Wikipedia to see, maybe I can see hyperbolic. And I found hyperbole, but I wasn't getting it. And I was looking and looking and looking, and the guy that kept showing up in all of this stuff was Bill Lance. He's the scientist that did a ton of research showing this amazing relationship. He even has a biochemistry equation named after him called the Lanz equation. I learned that later. So anyway, one day, because the other thing is this, it's one thing to understand the science, but my job is to translate it to consumers in a meaningful way. Oh, that can be really tough. And so and the way I write is I write based on what I'm very visual. I see things, and so I write about what I see and I hear or something like that. Although I don't really hear omega-3s, but maybe in the eating process you do or something. So as I'm writing, all of a sudden I get this, oh my God, that cartoon moment where you get hit by the pan and the guy goes, and his eyes go like that. That's what happened. It really did in my mind. And I thought, I think I know what this is the Michaelis-Menten equation. Now, I've never said that to myself in about 25 years, but I thought, I'm going to email Bill Lance. Maybe he'll give me the time of day. Dear Dr. Lance, I've read all your research. You're amazing. Da, 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 da. I didn't say amazing because I didn't want to think I'm, But I said, is this relationship that you describe, is this really the Michaelis-Menten equation that you're talking about? I got an email back so fast. It goes, this is wonderful. You understand this more than my students or something. And I hit a nerve with him. But the thing that really just blew me away, this came back from my biochemistry here. And I do remember being fascinated by it, watching all the Vmax, kinetic stuff. It's like, oh, look at this. It gets boom, and then it flats out. Boom, flats out. It's just, it's so fascinating. And that's basically what's happening with omega-3, omega-6, okay? And our diet's loaded in omega-6. Okay, so that's the other thing. If any of you here hate chemistry or don't tolerate it or are trying to tolerate it, this is just one story on, wow, this makes you wonder, am I really going to use this in my career? Yeah. Okay. So, and then of course all the foods stuff that I really hated taking here ended up helping me so much because how many books? Okay, here's the cookbooks. Healthy Homestyle Cooking. That sold 1 million copies. Oh my God, it did. Okay. Healthy Homestyle Cooking, more Healthy Homestyle Cooking. That's what happens when you sell well, they want to do another one. more Healthy Homestyle Desserts. And then Stealth Health was both a nutrition book, but half of it was recipes. And see, one thing I really learned here is you got to test your recipes. Oh my God, quantity foods. Well, how do you know for 50 if it works for 5 or 5 works for 50? You remember all that stuff? Too many eggs. Oh my God. Okay. So, stories. It's traumatic. We have therapy over that. So, because of my, a standard of training, it's like, of course I test all my recipes. I tested them all in the magazine. I tested them all in the books. And where this really started to I saw the benefit of that when I started doing television. Because when you do a book, you go on a book tour and they want you to, do recipes for them. And the food stylists are the ones who actually, it's so cool, they do all the work. They chop up your food, and you come on and go, hello, we just do some this, and there you are. They have the complete thing made and all that stuff. But I've done all the hard work already. But they were saying, it's so amazing, your recipes actually come out, and they yield the size you say they're going to yield. And I thought, well, of course they do. And that's what I learned. That's not true with all cookbook authors. This is how I was taught. So those are some things. I'll never forget, in Shape Magazine, there was this one zucchini bread recipe I had. And one thing I did besides lowering the fat is I added whole wheat flour to, boost the fiber. And, nutritionist, right? Okay, so I got, 5 letters. That's unheard of. I made your recipe and it didn't work. It sucked. And okay, this is weird. I've got to figure out what the heck is going on here. And the other part of testing is just because you test it and you write it, do people interpret it the same way in which you write it? Which is why now I actually also hire a tester after I do my stuff. So anyway, I had called each person, and this is before email. Do you know what email was? I called each person, and I asked, did you follow I followed it exactly. It wasn't making sense. And the symptom was this, runny, gooey. So then I started asking specifically, did you use whole wheat flour? Oh, I just used flour. I was like, that's the difference. But because of testing, I knew there was something else in the translation. But in stuff like that in recipes, then I might say something like, do not substitute. That's the stuff you learn about. Kind of a funny story. I have so many of them. I really believe that the word, for recipe testing and tester comes from being testy after doing all this stuff. I learned humility. I was creating, this is back when you couldn't find low-fat anything, and so you had to be really extra clever, sort of. So I was trying to do an upside-down pineapple cake, low-fat, and I was on my 9th version, 9. And I had 200 recipes to do total for this particular book. And on the 9th recipe, it burst into flames in the oven. Detector. And by the way, the reason it happened, I thought, oh, I'll put it in a cheesecake, springform pan, because that'll help. I forget what my thinking was, but all the caramelized stuff, drip down and flambe. So that's when I learned at some point, you've got to cut your losses and move on. And in that case, I didn't, use that particular recipe. But the books that I've written have usually been as a result of something I've experienced in my life. Self-health. What do you do for people who hate vegetables, yet they want to be healthy? So hence, if you chop up, spinach in little bitty pieces, or it looks like basil when you put it in spaghetti sauce, so things like that. So what's the problem for the consumer, and what's the solution? So that's been a pretty big part of my career. I've enjoyed it a lot, but it's a lot of work, I got to tell you. And the thing with writing books, some people think, oh my God, it's so wonderful, you get to be bestseller. I've worked really hard on every book, equally hard, and I've had a couple books that have been bestsellers, and I've had other ones that have just been bombs, and it's not because it's not good content, I don't know why, but because I have a passion for the topic, it's never a wasted effort on my part. And by the way, it's why I still have my private practice and other things going on, because, you don't know how books are going to go. Okay, so other things I do. Private practice. I really enjoy that a lot. Oh, good, there's a clock. I was thinking, oh my God, I have no idea what time it is. Wouldn't want to go past my time. That's a kiss of death. So, private practice. I specialize in eating disorders. And I'll tell you, I enjoy this so much. It's so incredibly gratifying. And it's such a process of establishing a relationship with a person, and more importantly, what their relationship is with eating and with food. And the relationships they have with food, it's amazing how it mirrors relationship issues going on in their life. And where I got especially interested in this was when I was working at Columbia Pictures. Oh, okay, side story here. So I get a call from Columbia Pictures out of the blue, and it's their exercise physiologist, and they said, hey, we're looking for a nutritionist. I go, how'd you get my name? They call me at home, And again, this is before email. And it makes me sound so old. I am. So, and they said, oh, well, we got your name from the USDA because they said you do a lot of TV. They were looking for someone who won't take crap from celebrities. I go, oh, that's me. I treat everyone like a celebrity, my patients. And so anyway, I ended up, there's a food story in this. So I go in and I do this interview with them, and I think it's going well. I thought, we're not closing the deal here. And as we're walking out, I said to Paul, the exercise physiologist, said, you're doing so much work with all of these celebrities. It would really be a shame that if your cafeteria doesn't offer the fuel to support the work they're doing. Bingo. Got it. Okay. So what I ended up doing for them, it was so much fun. I worked with their food service manager, helping. We created the fit and fuel menu as an option. With other stuff that they served at the cafeteria. And then I also counseled, oh my God, Fit and Famous. In fact, one of my funniest stories, but I can't name names. I don't. I would go on location sometimes. And one time I went to, oh my God, this house. And it was amazing. And I'm working just with the staff. And I'm thinking, okay, no more questions. I'm ready to hit the road. And I go, oh no, this is just the guest house. The real house is over here. I mean, it was just amazing. But to see all of this, and to be working with people, though, who still were so unhappy. They were unhappy in their bodies. They had amazing bodies. They had amazing lives. They had chefs. They had money. They had everything. But they didn't have this peace within. And this is even with people who weren't in front of the camera. I understand it when you're in front of the camera, there's, more pressure and so on. And that's when I just got absolutely fascinated. And to this day, I still am. And to me, for those of you who are interested in getting into counseling, it's the counseling process that is so rewarding. Not the education process. When I was in school, the way we were taught was mainly more education. This is what low cholesterol is, this is what saturated fat is, that kind of stuff. As opposed to now, just really looking at what are the issues getting in the way. And if you think about it right now, oh my God, there's so much access to information and technology, right? People can get nutrition information anywhere. We have more nutrition information today than we ever did before. It's on labels by federal law. It didn't used to be. We've got it on the internet. We've got it on the menus. We've got it everywhere. And yet people are having more problems than ever than eating. In fact, I think we're in the midst of an emergence of a perfect storm, and we're going to be seeing more eating disorders happening because of the public pressure for the war on obesity. And a book I just finished collaborating on, I'm so excited. It was so exciting to work with people who are just as passionate and work just as hard. A psychology professor from Ohio State University, Tracy Tilka, and she's the one that's done a lot of research on our work. And so with her, and then with Catherine Cook Cotton out of New York, I forget what, they have so many state universities there. But anyway, the book it's how to prevent both eating disorders and obesity in the school setting. And what we did, it's like going back to grad school, complete literature review, but then, our target audience isn't scientists. This is at the implementation level. So here's what the, evidence is, but what is the intervention evidence? And then what are the tools that teachers and coaches and so on can do? And one of the points that we just drill down, is that both body dissatisfaction and dieting increase the risk of both obesity and eating disorders. And so to be perpetuating stigma of overweight kids makes things worse, not better. When people hate their bodies, they don't want to be taken care of it, or they're embarrassed and they get teased. And this was, I can't wait till this book is out. It's just like, okay. Now that book didn't pay anything, just to give you some perspective. Other books, consumer books, you get a decent advance, but this one, because it's scholarly, we'll earn royalties as it comes in, but this was kind of more of a labor of love, literally, passionate about a topic. Okay. So, other things I'm doing. I gotta tell you this, okay. I think you'll like this because this is the result of me working with some students. I got approached by Cal State Fullerton. They approached me with a very good proposition, and it was their marketing entrepreneurial grad students who you have to apply for this program, but you have to pay too. But you apply, and if you get in, you get like this team of students. I felt like I was in one of those movies. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And so there's like 15 students looking at my business, my model, and also intuitive eating, and they came up with, I kind of wondered, come on, these people don't have any experience. Are they really going to help my business get to another level? But I was curious, and they had a great idea. One of their strongest suggestion was this. Now we're talking business, okay? Just in case you didn't know. Having a brand. Have you guys had that in any of your classes, the brand identity or marketing and that kind of stuff? Okay, it's a big deal. And what they were saying is here's the cool thing about intuitive eating, and I want to talk some more about that today. It's probably the book I'm the most proud of because it's made such an impact on all kinds of things. When Elise and I first wrote the book, it was published in '95. I have to tell you, I was kind of scared because one of the key components of it is you can eat whatever you want to with attunement. And I envisioned people throwing French fries and chocolate at us or something. Who do you call yourselves dietitians? How can you do that? But actually, it was based on research though. It was research inspired because we can't say we have intervention data. So anyway, fast forward, it has gone. Have you all heard of intuitive eating? Just in passing. That phrase didn't exist back then. And I was really thrilled when Susan Algers, who wrote, Mindful Eating, and many mindful eating books, I did a little interview with her, and she goes, you guys are the ones that really put that on the map. And, I never thought about this. First of all, you cannot copyright a title. That I've always known. I never thought about trademarking intuitive eating. In fact, let me tell you how the title became what it was. The original concept title was Dieting Backlash. That's when Susan Faluti's book was out, and the backlash and all that kind of stuff. Like, ooh, cool, timely. And our publisher gave us two key recommendations. We'd like to have a different title, and also we'd like you to turn your concepts into steps of some sort. And I'll tell you, that was another piece of synchronicity because we turned our chapters into principles. And when you do that, guess what? It's measurable. And this is where we got validation later on with research. And so, anyway, these things started back then. And long story short, it's become a kind of a household name now. And in the beginning, we're like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, the more people that can, foster an intuitive eating environment, that's great. But here are some things that have happened that we don't like. It's perverted. Here, take a juice cleansing fast and be an intuitive eater. It's like, that's not intuitive eating, So that dilutes the brand and all that kind of stuff. We could attempt to trademark it now. But the problem with trademarking laws, it's basically, to me, it's all negative energy. You have to just keep sending out cease and desist letters, cease and desist. And some people have been using it. I just don't want to spend my time and money in that direction. So another way that you can go is to really make it very clear this intuitive eating is the work of, that Elise and I have done. And anyway, so the big recommendation that came from the student group was that we should really have an online community for intuitive eating. And I gotta tell you, I was familiar with communities, and at first, I don't know if I really even liked their idea or took it. It's not that I didn't take it serious. I just wasn't sure if it was worth all the effort, because it's a lot of work to get something established. And they just provided a lot of really good data. And they said, out of all the things we recommend, we highly recommend you do this. So we just launched it about a month ago. And I got to tell you, it's so rewarding. Having people support each other, especially in this society where people are crazily dieting and Biggest Loser and all this kind of stuff, that when people are going through intuitive eating, they can feel like they're crazy when everyone around them is dieting. So that's something that's new, and it's time consuming. Let's see, a couple other things, surprises to me. I was thinking of things I didn't ever anticipate doing as a diet, that never was even on my radar. I can't believe I got paid to do this. Do you know Grey's Anatomy? Chandra Wilson? Okay, this is really embarrassing. This part's embarrassing. I got asked to do a series of satellite media tours with her. And what that is we stay all day in a studio and we give interviews in one place from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And I knew about Grey's Anatomy, but I didn't watch much TV, and I was mentioning it to my daughter. She goes, Mom, you gotta know that show, Chandra Wilson, oh my God, da-da-da. I said, okay, so I read the season, I looked at it, and okay. So anyway, because we're on having to do East Coast time stuff, we have to arrive in the studio at 2 a.m. to get ready. And 2:30, interviews begin. So here we are from 2:30 to 7 a.m. doing, I think we did 30 interviews. And oh my God, we got so slap happy because it's, it's crazy, tired. We had so much fun. I was thinking, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. This is fun, And I was asking her, she said she had to go back to work that day. I thought, oh my God, you're crazy. You're going to work on the same day of doing this? And she said to me, oh, it's just mask work. I go, mask work? And I was thinking of the drama signs of and she goes, no. The surgeon's mask, and she started doing these expressive eyes. She goes, when someone's dying, So we'd be doing all this stuff on commercials. She'd be getting the fruit on the table. Oh, watch me, Evelyn, I'm polishing the grapes. So just doing stuff like that, it's just so much fun. Okay. So the other thing I'm also doing is I'm supervising/coaching dietitians. Some of them are new into the profession, but a lot of them are people who are working more in the counseling field in terms of eating disorders and intuitive eating. And that's really a lot of fun to do. So I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but I do want to pause for a moment and just do two things. Give a little more stuff on intuitive eating and open up to you guys. I realize I haven't asked you to ask me a question yet, so this is hogging up my own stuff. Okay. To date, since intuitive eating has been published, there have been over 25 studies on our work showing really positive things. Intuitive eaters have a lower body mass index without internalizing the thin ideal. They have lower cholesterol, lower triglycerides. They have better sense of self-esteem, better proactive coping, lower disordered eating, and on and on and on and on. We need more intervention studies to be done. These are a lot of association studies. This is hot off the press, it's not published yet. This is what's cool when you know the researchers like, let me tell you stuff. So first of all, Tracy Tocco, who I just mentioned, she did this study in which she took 1,300 college women and asked basically 2 questions but did 4 studies. She's very industrious. First of all, can we measure and identify, quantify the intuitive eater, and then so what? Is there any difference or benefit to being an intuitive eater? And the answer was yes and yes. And with that, she created the intuitive eating assessment scale and found there are 3 core characteristics. Intuitive eaters are able to eat according to hunger and fullness. They have unconditional permission to eat when and what they want when hungry, and they can distinguish emotional sensations in their body from, hunger and satiety cues. And, oh my gosh, the 4 studies within that, it just blew me away. In fact, I was really embarrassed to discover, even though I read this paper over and over again, when we were doing this last book, I ended up reading more stuff I didn't know. I was like, how did I miss this, So anyway, I asked Tracy if I could use her assessment in my practice. And she goes, oh, sure. And I wasn't thinking about science versus practical real life stuff because she had, I think, 27 questions. 5 of them you reverse score, and the other one you do this, if they do that. And can you imagine doing that in a half an hour with a patient or an hour? And I realized this is not practical. And so what I did is I turned those into yes or no questions just to get the trending on that. And that's been really helpful. Anyway, in Texas, a group of researchers asked the question, wow, does this assessment scale apply to middle school kids? And the answer was yes, and this does apply, but they also found, in addition to those 3 characteristics, the kids also needed to trust those signals. And I think that's a really key finding. I told Tracy, I think, if we're to measure that in an adult, I think we'd see the same thing. It's what I see in my practice. And it's my concern I have right now over the fear-mongering that we're living in. It's like we're 1 bite away from obesity. We're 1 bite away from a heart attack. We're 1 bite away from cancer. And what this does is create more distrust in the body. And actually, we need more of that. So on the one hand, we have all this research that starts to emerge. This all happened around 2005 and 2006. Synchronicity. So that's research. Then this interesting thing happened in the media. I got a call from People magazine. Oh, this is a cool story because I was only in my office on this day because I was giving a student an interview. He was doing some documentary for a project, and I said, okay, I'll help you out with that. And so I got there early, checked my voicemail, and People magazine, we're going to call them up. And they said, we're doing a story, a celebrity. I go, I can't name names. They go, no, we know, but this person hasn't worked with you. They, however, have used your work, intuitive eating, and they're just raving about it. And we'd like to interview you. And I'm looking at my clock, like, you know what? I'd love to, but I have another interview. And I didn't tell her I was a student, but in hindsight, it sounded kind of funny. I'm turning down People magazine to work with a student, but I had a commitment. So they called back, and when they called another time to fact check the story, I go, oh my God, this is going to be big. And they said, it's going to be on the cover of People. So I called Elise, co-author. I said, you know what, we better get a website. We had no website. This was in 2006 or 7. And I said, we better get a website. So anyway, here's what happened. Magazine, front page, and they had a little sidebar column feature. It had a picture of our book and an interview with me. This little tiny thing. All of a sudden, our book went to #1 on Amazon. This is after it's been published, And it's so funny. We had been so frustrated with Barnes & Noble because they weren't keeping our books in their New York store. And in this time period, Barnes & Noble actually called our publisher and said, can you have your authors link to our website? Their book is just taken off and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that really kind of propelled it to another level. And in that same time period, residential eating disorder centers also started using intuitive eating as a model to work toward recovery. So all these 3 things happening at once. And then to have it come full circle, was it last month? You know that show called Smash? Catherine McPhee. Well, she was the one that the magazine did the big thing on our book. And I got called to do an interview about her and her new role, and they wanted my perspective on her recovery, And I said, well, I haven't worked with her, and because I haven't, I can give you my comments. I said, I've kind of watched her from afar, and, I hope she does well, but my concern is this injury is so toxic, it can just eat you up alive, but hopefully she's got her support systems intact and knows the red flags to look for, and on and on and on and on. So anyway, you just never know how things can happen. So our book has just been recently updated, and it's coming out in July 2012. Major update. We've added 2 new chapters, including a research chapter, a family chapter, and we've also taken all the weight information out of the book, including on the cover where it says, get down to the natural weight that fits you. And back when it was on the cover in 95, we were actually okay with that. But looking at the research and the need to go at health, oh, thank you. There you go, show and tell. What's it actually say?
Huh?
What's it say on the weight thing?
Get to the natural weight that fits you.
Okay, get to the natural weight that fits you. That's pretty close. So anyway, we asked the publisher to take it off, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to have a war. But they agreed, so yay. Okay, so lastly and relatedly, the other thing I do is I do teleseminars. And I had no idea I'd have so much fun. I train health professionals how to do the intuitive eating process. And with technology, oh my God, I've had a doctor from Lithuania. I've had people from Ireland, Australia, China. It's cool, you know, we're spreading the word. So what I'd like to do right now, because I've just been, is open it up for some questions. Oh, I can put you to sleep tonight. Okay, yeah.
Out of the three core things, the hunger, fullness, the allowing all foods, and the distinguishing emotional eating,
Yeah.
which one takes the longest usually for patients to really embrace?
Allow all foods. And actually, even what takes even longer is accepting or respecting their body. Because what ends up happening is, I've got some patients in my practice right now they're done with dieting, they know it doesn't work, and they feel like they're in a rock and a hard place because the intuitive eating process takes a while, and they hate their body. And I say to them, this work is kind of like, you know, the old-fashioned clock where the little hour hand moves from 1 to 2, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We don't see it move, but it does. And so that's the part that can get really challenging, is how do we help our clients tolerate their here and now body, living in a weight stigma culture that we're in. But I got to tell you, if we had time, the data on dieting and weight gain, unbelievable. To me, it's so unethical that even dieting is even allowed to happen. If dieting was a drug, it would be against the law. It would be out of there. They'd be in jail. There was a study in the fall. Seriously, it's horrible. I mean, you look at the data. You go on my blog, and I got some really good stuff on there. There was a study in the fall on 4,000 twins. Can you imagine 4,000 twins? That's 2,000 pairs of twins. And the researchers asked the question, well, maybe people who diet gain weight because they have a genetic propensity, so it's a self-selection thing. Guess what? No, they found that dieting, independent of genetics, increased weight gain, and it was dose responsive. So the more dieting, the more weight that went up. And they just, a completely other new study, different group of people looking at bulimics, long-term study. And people who had bulimia for the longest period of time, like 8 years, would gain more weight versus someone who was in it for like 2 years. And so the message there, we got to get you into recovery sooner, you know? So that's where I really feel so strongly about. It is not ethical to help someone into dieting. And no matter the cause. Oh my God, my doctor said I have to lose weight. Oh my God, I got diabetes. Well, guess what? The dieting process makes these things worse. It messes with your head, and it does. And y'all know the Ansel Keys study? It should be required. Well, actually, you know what? It's on my bucket list. I just finally bought the Xerox copy. I was so excited. My friend goes, "Oh my God, only you would be excited about that." So I'm looking at it, single spaces. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's dense. And then guess what? I only have part 1. And it's 1,000 pages. But what I want to alert you to is this great historical narrative that came out about 3 years ago, and it's called The Great Starvation Study, The Men Who Starved for Common something. It's a great true story looking at these men and what happened to them. And as a side note, I was talking about this study at a conference in Canada last month, and one of my colleagues, I've known her for a long time, she shared with me that when she was her daughter's PE teacher was actually a participant in that study, and he's still obsessed with food to this day. It creates eating disorders, and it just messes so bad. So anyway, that's the toughest part. I got kind of long-winded. There was another question somewhere around here. Yeah.
Okay, so you are so successful and so inspiring, but can you tell us about sometime in your life on that path that you felt like you hit a roadblock or things didn't go the way you wanted?
I'd love to.
And how did you
That's a good question. That's a better question. I'll tell you 2. One's the beginning and one's a roadblock.
Okay.
In the beginning, I didn't start out like this. Oh my God, the first thing I ever wrote, tidy diaper service. I called the company. I said, I think your readers would be interested in nutrition. How about a nutrition article? I think I did that for free. Now, at least today with blogging, you can show your writing style. You don't have to be published in a print thing. So I did a lot of stuff for free. And that's one thing I want to get. This did not happen overnight. I volunteered, did all kinds of things, but I only did the things I really had interest in. So let me tell you my roadblock. This really happened. And it was, when the stock market crash was that 2000, recently, 3 years? First time in my life, my practice, I mean, it was bad. Up until that time, I'd never been affected by the economy. And I actually got scared, thinking, oh my God, the patients I had were coming in less often because they couldn't afford it. And I would tell them, I really respect your financial responsibility, and then other patients who might be coming in weren't because, of the finances. And I don't take insurance. And I'm thinking, holy Toledo, I have got to figure out a way to get a revenue stream going. So I asked myself this question: what is it that I'd like to do more of that I'm not doing? And I thought, and you know what? I love speaking. I get asked to speak a lot, but quite often they can't afford my fee. And that's when I took a teleseminar training class, how to conduct teleseminars training. It was taught actually by a dietitian who I met on LinkedIn, who I never knew at that time. There's 4 classes, and out of the group in there, I was really focused. I already knew my target. I knew what I wanted to do. And so I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. It's very low revenue. I mean, low overhead, because you can get a free conference line, and if you do all your marketing online, there's really not much. And it just took off, and I love it. And I look back and I say, that was really a scary time in my life, but I'm really glad it happened because it's led to other things that I'm very excited about. So my point 2 in this is robots can happen anywhere. Here's another one. This is so personal, but it's true. The office I'm in right now in Newport Beach, I actually bought my office. It's an office condo, and I was so excited, and I'm so proud. I'm a landowner kind of thing. And, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. It makes sense. People own homes rather than rent if they can. But when the market crashed, my property value sucked. I mean, it went down by half. Now, I'm in it from the long haul, so that's fine. But when the economy's going like this, and now instead of renting, I'm owning, there's just a lot of complexity to that. And so what's great about your question is it's one thing to look and say, oh my God, she's so successful, this is what I want to do. But the reality is there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of unpredictability. You need to be able to stay focused. I cannot tell you how hard and how long I work. In fact, someone once asked, how many hours do you work? And I said, you know what? I don't keep track, so I think I would go crazy if I knew. And actually, they tend to be long when I'm working on books. But the other thing I really do work at is staying balanced by not working too much, because I want to be a model. I don't want to be a hypocrite to my patients and so on. So that's why really one of my messages is finding out what you are passionate about. Here's another side story. This is weird. My son, when he was a toddler, got diagnosed with celiac disease. At the time, it was really scary. He's a teenager now, and he's so cool, he knows everything. So, I know, yeah, I'm so lucky. At the time, though, celiac disease wasn't like it is right now, and I thought, oh my God, does he have cancer or something? We're going to all these clinics. So long story short, I get real involved in the celiac community. I never thought my path would go that way, and the strangest thing I never thought I would see is eating disorders and gluten-free being an issue, because gluten-free is the new eating disorder mask. Instead of being vegetarian, it's like, oh, I'm gluten-free, because now it's an easy way to restrict. So you just never know, but it's a really good example how if you have a passion for something. I don't know if you know who Shelley Case is. She's a very well-known dietitian doing gluten-free trainings and whatnot. She had a passion for celiac disease a long time ago, and now she's very successful at her trainings and what she does. So I think the toughest thing is to find out what you do love and then have a path and a focus to it. I think with technology, there are so many possibilities. Oh my God, between apps and I think the sky's the limit. At the same time, I think it's intimidating. It's kind of like giving a writer a blank piece of paper and saying, go write the best novel of your life. It's like, I don't know where to start, I just think it's a really great time. I think people are continuing to be interested in health and wellness and nutrition. And I think it was in Newsweek or Business Week. It was in like the top 10 of jobs forecasting, like where there's, you're going to keep your job kind of thing. So, yeah. More questions? Yes.
One question. What do you recommend individuals who want to start their own private practice?
For those who want to start, that's a great question. You want to start your own private practice, you've got to have experience, okay? If you start off and you have no people are going to want, how can I say this? You need experience. So what I would recommend is this, is go get paid to get that experience. Be a counselor at a wellness center or a hospital or somewhere else. See if you like it, because what if you don't? The idea is really nice, but maybe you won't like it, you know? And the same thing with writing. People might be loving the idea of, ooh, seeing their byline, but maybe they don't like it, you know? I used to, by the way, this is another side note, I used to struggle with writing. And this is kind of funny. It was after my 6th book. I was doing an interview at 6 a.m. Philadelphia time, so it's 3 a.m. California time. It was a quick interview, got on the plane, and I drank a ton of coffee because I was so tired to do that interview. I'm on the plane. I got so much work. I couldn't believe it. I was telling my friend this. She goes, Evelyn, I think you have ADD. Long story short, I have ADD. I got diagnosed, I got treated, and now writing is so much. I can sit and I can write. Before it was really as fighting myself. I liked the outcome, but the process was painful. So you can overcome stuff too. Yeah. Questions? More? Yes.
What did you do at Cedars-Sinai?
Cedars-Sinai, I worked critical care and loved it. So that was intensive care, TBN, tube fitting, all that stuff, because it's a completely different thing to know in a textbook. But when you're looking at lab values, gosh, is that albumin normal because they're overhydrated, or what's going on with them? And gosh, I use it a lot right now with my eating disorder patients, because with chronic malnutrition, the problem is most labs will show up normal with adaptation, the exception being C3 complement. Most docs don't know about that. And that's the other thing with private practice. It's good to get experience talking to doctors. They don't know what they're doing, a lot of them. And it's not that they're idiots. You just can't be an expert in everything. And what I find is the doctors who really know what they're doing, they're the ones who refer to dietitians. And so, but to be able to be assertive and say, hey, I need this. Just yesterday, I called up a psychiatrist and said, what would you think about, either changing a medication to, Zyprexa, or maybe upping Risperdal, I think this kid's heading back for residential. Maybe this could be a turn of, And it's a very team kind of thing. And you only do those kinds of things with experience. I would have never done that in the beginning, just getting started. I didn't know what those drugs were, So, yeah. Medications, yeah. Every psychiatrist always corrects me, these are medications. Drugs are on the streets up there. More questions? Yes.
Do you get a lot of athletes coming into you with eating disorders?
I do.
And, what are the main kind of common ones, and what's your best advice, I guess?
I'll tell you what I see a lot. I do see a lot of athletes. Here's the problem. They're often under the radar because according to their peer group who are not athletes, they appear to be eating normal, but they're not. Pressures in physique-oriented sports. I've got an ice skater right now. I had a tennis player last year. I've got a runner right now who had a fracture. Osteoporosis. I had another patient who ran against medical advice and had a pubic stress fracture. I've never seen that before. And so these things are really serious, and this is where knowing biochemistry is so important, because the doctors don't know it either. When you're not getting enough to eat, it really affects the endocrinology and metabolism. It affects the hormonal balloon and bone, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really challenging, and also with some of these coaches that may be inappropriate. And sometimes the kid needs to change the sport. One of the saddest cases I had last year is she was really wonderful to work with. But I was telling her, I said, you're not eating enough for your sport. You're adding this extra training against your coach is not asking you to do this. You could be headed for a stress fracture. Research shows, even without an eating disorder, people who don't get enough to eat, who are athletes, girls, have 4 times the risk of getting injuries. Okay, 4-fold. And guess what? She got a stress fracture. And because she was in physical therapy, it wasn't working. They did an MRI, stress fracture. I said, you need to be off this sport. And she said, nope. And I got permission to talk to her mom, and this is the part that got me. Mom was saying, oh, but she's so happy. And she can get a spark. Oh, my God. And coaches who say, oh, this is great. They might have a stress fracture. I just want to shoot them. In a nice way, okay? Not in a yeah, I got to be careful how I say that. So, yeah.
What sport was that?
It was a couple sports. She's like a dual sport person, And then there's sometimes, too, like water polo. I see a fair amount of those athletes, not because they're an eating disorder, they're making the schedule so crazy when they're doing 2-a-day swimming and then going to school full-time and all these projects. Sometimes an issue of not getting enough. Oh, here's my great one. So I was seeing this world-class cyclist. He came in to see me because 2 things. He's constantly tired. He told me he was lazy. And anytime someone tells me that, I first of all, really? What evidence do you have for that? So he goes on and gives me his training schedule. He's training 30 hours a week on the road. I go, you're not lazy, you're really tired. And even though he was eating about 2,000 calories, he needed 7,000 calories. And, you know, in this case, it's not an eating disorder. It's like, okay, what do we do for this guy who needs all this nutrition, doesn't want to really, he's not interested in food per se. And I think we got somewhere on, like, Boost Plus or stuff like that just to get him going. And then what I'm always doing is, like, let's see how you feel. Let's see if the training feels different, you know. And then, relatedly on the side, there's a new study that just came out last month that the brain has glycogen stores. Did you know that? It's brand new. I think that's so cool. Because before it's only been the muscle and the liver. You know, muscle and liver, they don't share. I don't think the brain does either, but fascinating. So it's amazing to me the complexity of these cases because the articulation, high, keeping up with their sport and with their studies, high, and yet they are falling apart. I had a patient come in, new patient. I didn't do a good job of screening. I'm glad she came in with her mom. But I said, you know, you need to go to ER. She got not only admitted, she was in cardiac center for 2 weeks, you know. So it drives me nuts. A lot of these docs, when I send someone to ER, oh, you got the heart of an athlete. It's like, no, you have bradycardia. The average woman's heart rate for an athlete is not 55 or less. It's around 60. And so there's that goes on. You can tell I kind of get really passionate about this. So, yeah. And the problem with this, with athletes especially, is exercise is viewed as so wonderful, and it is on many levels, except when it gets to be too much, that it blinds a lot of people in terms of what they're doing. So, yeah, but I love it, yeah.
With a diet that's so high in calorie, like, what do you recommend eating? Like, because you can't just eat, junk food, but like nutritious foods, you can't just keep eating them because you'll get full and you won't reach that.
You're dead on that. Two issues. One, the Pritikin diet you probably never heard of. Have you heard of that one? Long ago in the 80s, but it was an ultra low-fat diet when low-fat didn't exist. And the athletes started picking it up. And guess what? They weren't getting enough to eat, and they're having incredible sweet cravings as their way their body's saying, you're not getting enough to eat. So what I usually do, this is where the art comes in. Of course we look at calorically dense foods like juice and nuts and those kinds of things, but the real question is, does this person even like this food? Is it compatible with their training? So it's a combination of things. I use a lot of trail mix. That's probably one of my highest ones. I try not to rely too much on energy bars. Some are okay, but I don't want someone to have to eat 10 energy bars in a day. I had a ballerina, I'll never forget this, recovered from an eating disorder. She's doing fabulous. She came in and she's all upset. She goes, oh my God, I ate 5 energy bars today. And I said, what happened? And actually it was a really cool story. She had a crazy schedule, no time to eat. I said, you know what? You took good care of your body. She goes, oh, but I feel so fat. And I'm like, what's new? I said, what? Let me set it up. I have a relationship with them. I said, do you have the label of that bar? She goes, yeah. And I got out my little dietitian brain on, looked at it. Oh my God, you just had like 40 grams of fiber. No wonder you're feeling that way. Anyone would. And when she heard that, it was really cool because now she was able to reframe her experience. Oh, this is bloating from too much fiber. It doesn't mean I ate too much or it doesn't mean I'm fat. So that's a lot of what I do, a lot of cognitive reframing, body experience and interpretation of what it really means. And it's amazing people get afraid of hunger. I'm working with an athlete right now. Eating disorder, atypical, a lot of binging, purging, and she was telling me she's afraid of hunger. And I said, well, if you're afraid of hunger, what do? She goes, I don't eat. And you know what happens with that, right? The hunger gets stronger, and it gets ravenous, and it hijacks you. And so you've got biological hunger going on, and also emotional coping, and then these rigid rules. Here's what's unusual in this particular situation. Usually when I start talking about increasing eating, I'm careful how I say it, there's a lot of reluctance, and it's baby steps. But in her case, she wanted to start eating a lot more. I think we did like 500 calories or something, and it's really helping her turn around. So, yay! That's not so typical, but it's fun when it happens like that. Yeah, it's amazing. Plus, it's a team approach. You're working with a psychologist, you're working with a psychiatrist, you're working often with a physician. So it can be really busy. especially when they're all needing to get into residential treatment. It gets a little bit too much. And when that happens, I don't take on new patients of that intensity until my load evens out a bit. Okay. Any more questions? Or when you're, yeah.
In regard to intuitive eating, how did that come about? Where did the concept come from?
It came from several things. First of all, non-dieting was kind of known for a while, non-dieting approach. There was a popular book called Overcoming Overeating by Hirschman and Munter, and then, Janine Roth. And so it came out of this. We were looking, from a marketing consumer standpoint, no dietitian ever wrote a book like this, but we also we looked at the research. We looked at restraint theory that shows that when people have rules around eating, when those rules get broken because of stress or something, they end up overeating. We look at habituation research, which shows that the more a person is exposed to food over time, the less of a big deal it is. And the converse also happens. When foods are kept forbidden, it becomes more sought after. And so it came out of a combination of all those things. And what we're trying to do is have a comprehensive idea. It's like, how do we have someone be a normal eater and not diet? And that's how we came up with the 10 principles. So it was a lot of discussion, I'll tell you. Oh, yeah, in fact, when we were looking at the title, Elise was saying something like, let's make it the natural eater. And I go, oh my God, Elise, that's like Birkenstocks and alfalfa sprouts. No one's going to want to buy that. And somehow we came up with intuitive eating. So, yeah, you just never know. Yes?
So when people follow intuitive eating, are they supposed to go to their normal weight, to a normal healthy weight, or would you consider, if they stay overweight, would you consider that healthy?
That's an excellent question. I've really changed a lot of my views on that, and it has to do with this. First of all, if someone normalizes their eating, let's say someone's a stress eater, and now they no longer eat from stress, usually we'll see the weight kind of go down. However, over the years, I have worked with people who've dieted all their life, and when they become an intuitive eater, they might not lose weight. They stay where they're at. They don't keep going up, but they stop the dieting. And so the real question becomes the issue of health at every size. And I'll give you a great example, because I'll never forget this. I had a patient. I saw her every week for a year. And our last session was bittersweet. She said, Evelyn, I'm so grateful. I can eat when I'm hungry. I can stop when I'm full. I don't have forbidden foods. But I'm so frustrated and kind of angry that I haven't lost any weight. And I remember thinking at the time, it's like this quintessential dilemma, because to have her eat less would be wrong, and to have her exercise more would also be wrong. So long story short, 4 years later, I get a handwritten letter, because there wasn't email back then, and she said, Dear Evelyn, I just want to let you know the rest of my story. She ended up going into therapy. She didn't change her eating. She kept the way it was with our work together, and she ended up losing like 2 dress sizes and something like that. That was a 4-year process. And I've seen things like that happen that don't make sense mathematically, and the only way I can describe it is like body trust. I see it with patients with eating disorders. If you read Jenny Schaefer's books, her first one's Life Without Ed, but the second one is Hello, Me, Goodbye, Ed. Ed being acronym for eating disorder. She talks about how she really didn't like her body. She accepted it, but somewhere into her recovery, it kind of shifted down a bit. That's not everyone's story, though, So that's my biggest concern. If someone is truly leading a healthy lifestyle, they're physically active, they're eating well, and their weight is higher weight according to the tables, do we have them, go on a dieting path to lose more weight in the name of health when we know it actually increases bigger problems? In fact, 3 studies out of Italy showed that you can train people how to recognize initial hunger and respond to it. And in doing so, they end up having healthier body weights. They actually looked at that, and they have a better no insulin resistance and better A1Cs compared to standard exercise things. So I think that's a question a lot of people are really grappling with right now, and I think that's why we need to really embrace this idea. The size is less of an issue. It's healthy for everyone, for example, to eat vegetables, whether you're thin or whether you're overweight. And what happens when we start looking at weights, that message gets lost, So I don't know if that really answered your question satisfactorily, but I spent a lot of time with that with a lot of my patients, And one of the ways I look at it, it's kind of philosophical. If you haven't had the opportunity to read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Life for Meaning, or something like that, it's a classic. He talks about, it's great, he's a psychiatrist who was in the concentration camp. He says, the only reason I'm telling you this story, my concentration camp days, is so that you understand how valid this logos therapy is. The bottom line is, the purpose in life is to find your purpose in life, your meaning in life. And when I was reading that book, I thought, wow, people who are chronically dieting or chronically weight obsessed, regardless of the size of their weight, that is constantly interfering with life purpose. It's kind of like when someone, can you tell like when you're on the phone with someone and you know they're texting or doing something else, they're participating in the conversation, but they're not there? Well, when someone's dieting or worried about their weight, that kind of happens that way too. And so to me, it's sad. It takes people off their focus. I've got a lady right now, 55 years old, and just figured out that dieting doesn't work, you know? So I can't believe I wasted all this time. She thought, well, once I got the guy, once I got married, once I got the career, once I had the kids, and now she's 55 and realized, oh my God, it's a big sham, you know? So it makes Weight Watchers really, you know, wealthy. Wall Street Journal going after men now to increase their market share. And, you know, when I do public, you know, when I speak to the public, I'll get asked the question, what about Weight Watchers? It's a sensible way to go. And I'm more direct with that now, and I'll say, what do you do when you're hungry and your points are all gone? What do you do then? And that's like, oh my God. And they come up to me afterwards, I'm so glad you said that. And, you know, when did this become that, oh, this is a healthy way to go? This wasn't even based out of science, you know? And yet, oh, yes, that's a healthy approach to go. Mm-mm. It's a diet. It's a diet. It's a diet. At the same time, I don't, you know, Jennifer Hudson, I hope to God she doesn't have an eating disorder, and maybe she just something changed where she got some stuff together. You know, if someone goes on a diet and now they're eating breakfast for the first time and maybe they're active for the first time and they sustain that, I can see, okay, how that might sustain what they're doing. But, you know, I'll never forget Christy Alley when she was Jenny Craig's spokesperson. And I don't know her, so I can talk about her. That sounds weird. She was talking about how she binge eats. And I go, oh my God, she is going to be an even bigger binge eater afterwards. And sadly, that's what happened. So it's predictable. Yeah. Okay. So, oh my God, are we past time, Dariella?
No.
Are you sure?
I have the room till 8:30.
Oh, are you guys here to 8:30?
No.
All right. I mean, I'll stay longer if you want me to.
The
Yeah.
class is actually scheduled till 8:45 for my 234 students.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
can't
let's,
keep them that long.
so let's do this. For those of you that need to go and you don't want to feel rude, you can go, and it won't be rude. And for those of you that need to stay, I'll stay, because I, you know, anything I can do to help. Because here's the other problem that you should know. I've been getting oodles and oodles of requests from students and interns across the country, and I was telling Dariella, I just can't meet all these requests, which is why I asked if we can do this all at once and maybe videotape it so I can just give a resource to people. I think because of the internet, my colleagues are also getting a lot of requests also. So it's not that I don't care or don't want to. There's only so much time in a day and a week and so on. So more questions for those of you who are staying. You can come up closer if you want. We'll have a session.
My council 50 students.
Nutrition, trauma, and drama. Oh, I remember that. Especially when I was like senior. We'd all cry around the same time, not in the same place. But was it you too? It's like, oh my God, that was just me. Okay. It's stressful.
You're talking about April 1st?
April 1st? Yeah.
Oh, counseling?
Yes, question.
So right now, magazines talk about weight is really weight obsessed.
Yeah.
So do you think that's actually a good venue for dietitians to be writing if you have a sort of counter standpoint? Or do you think that gives more legitimacy to magazines who are pushing really incorrect information?
I'm going to tell you a real story about this. There's money, there's drama, there's, oh my God, okay. I did a lot of magazine writing, and that was actually my sentiment, that I will show the better way. And I did a lot of writing for First Magazine. On the cover, they would have these diets with themes, and I would show them, here's how you can eat sweets. Really, you can, and all that. And then this is when it stopped for me. I got a call from one of the big magazines. It might have been Red Book, I don't know, but let me just put it this way. Connor was 2, he's 17 now. So 15 years ago, they offered me $5,000. That was a lot of money back then. Still a chunk of change now. They offered me $5,000 to create a diet, to lose 10 pounds, to get into a black girl dress for New Year's, you know, in a week. And, yeah. So I'm talking to the editor it's not ethical. She goes, oh, it's just one time. I go, no, but it's perpetuating the problem. And I turned it down. I said, no. Okay. Yeah. I turned down, oh, if you only knew how much money I've turned down over the years. I feel so good about myself because I know I'm ethical. People don't necessarily know that, but anyway, not bragging, but just, yeah. But at the same time, there's so much opportunity. I wouldn't want to discourage you from being in that venue. In fact, oh, here's exciting stuff. Eating Well magazine doing a feature on intuitive eating. And it happened, this is kind of fun. I did I was at the ADA and did a talk there. 1,500 people, all the chairs were filled. They had to turn people away. And the editors of Eating Well were in there. I didn't know that. And they said they were already thinking about doing something on intuitive eating, but when they heard me speak, they said, yep, that's it. So we did the interview, and they said to me, Evelyn, it seems like it's just suddenly starting to take off overnight. Is that your perception? I go, yeah. And they started laughing. Oh, yeah, you're probably getting all the calls. Yeah. But anyway, it's really cool. They're going to be doing it in their, is it May, June? I think it's their May, June issue. So they're going to have the intuitive eating assessment quiz, and anyway. So that's an example where they're promoting intuitive eating. Let me give you another example that goes more to your question. This is actually kind of fun. 2 years ago, I got a call by Fitness Magazine, and they do these reader makeover things. And they said, we have 4 healthy readers who can't lose weight. They know everything about healthy eating. We'd like you to do makeover. And I said, I don't do menu makeover things. And I go, we know. You do intuitive eating. I go, yes, I do. So I go, that's fine. That's totally what we expected. So I was thinking, how am I going to do this in a limited amount of time? Because this is process-oriented. It's not just eat this, eat that, So what I did is I took the intuitive eating assessment scale. It's only like 15 questions. And I had these 4 women fill it out. And what it did, it helped me really zero in on what the key issues were. And then I had 2 sessions with them. And I was so thrilled with what went into the story because one of the women said, God, this was more like a psychologist, and this made all the difference in the world. Instead of looking at exactly what they're eating, for example, this one woman, she was so chronically tired, chasing after her kids. The only time she ever got downtime was at night, so she was getting very little sleep. But we know the research on sleep and what that does to insulin resistance and everything else. So in these cases, they got a shift that was quite different because we're looking at actually what is the obstacle or what is the challenge as opposed to put me on this diet and I'm fine and fabulous, So, yeah. One thing I also learned the hard way, especially just coming out of grad school, I'd be at social functions, mixed, not health professionals, and someone would find out I'm a dietitian, I'm a dietitian badge, and in my mind. And then they'd go on to say, they asked me an opinion about the diet of the month or something, like Atkins or whatever it was, and I'd give a very thoughtful response. I mean, really. And then I realized, they just want to talk about what they're doing. They really don't care about my opinion. And then I also realized, I need to set a boundary. I'm not going to do this at mixed functions and parties and so on and so on. And that helped my sanity tremendously. So just a thought. Yes?
In our society today, we have so many people claiming to be health professionals and nutritionists, who are actually giving out false information, if not harmful. How is the best way that you found to cope with that, I guess?
I will tell you, because it was something I would seek about when I was a student. And at that time, the National Council Against Health Fraud was very, very popular. I don't know if it's still popular now. One of the founders is dead now, but anyway, they would document all these atrocities and yeah. And after a while, I kept having this anger. I'm thinking, maybe I need to look at this a different way. And what I started doing is realizing, this stuff is a bunch of bunk, but they have a way of exciting people about nutrition. And maybe it's actually going to be good for our field. If either we learn from that or find a way to harness that. And that's what I find. And so here's what happens now, present day. Where I get into really ethical dilemmas is when I'm having a patient who's new to me, but let's say they're working with a chiropractor or naturopath. And let me back up. My daughter is married to a branded chiropractor, and there are good chiropractors, and he's one of them. She went to the school, by the way. So anyway, they might come out with outrageous stuff. I just had a patient who I've worked with for now about 4 years. She's doing very well. Said, my chiropractor said that I would do better without gluten. And I go, what did he base that on? oh, he did some tests. I go, what test was that? You know? And she said whatever it was. I said, you know, that's not accurate information. And I'd like you to look at how might this help you or how might this harm you, knowing your history and what happens when you narrowly focus on food. So instead of getting into it with, oh my God, they're an idiot, that doesn't get you very far if it's a new patient that you have, because you're a stranger to them. And this same patient, by the way, it was about 3 years ago, she was seeing a quack. I knew it. And I would just try and reframe it. And then Black Monday came. Friday, rather. Black Friday. She calls it Black Friday. 3-pound Black Friday. Because she went to his office, and she weighed 3 pounds higher than the week before. And his response to her was, you should go on a 500-calorie diet. I know, the gas. But because of all the work we had done, she knew that was so wrong, she quit seeing him, you know. So that was a meaningful change that happened. So, and then, you know, what's really fascinating, though, is where there's all these gray areas where there is some good information out there. You know, I was at a conference, it was a cool retreat. Oh my God, I'll have to tell you about it. But I was the only dietitian, there were a lot of psychologists, there was a naturopath, and they go, sort of, you know, that's not fair of me. But I learned about the education she had and all the chemistry, and they just frame it a little bit different. So sometimes we also need to be an open mind. And I'll tell you right now that really concerns me greatly, because I've seen it. I've been on the inside of some stuff. I didn't know I was so naive. Some of the stuff that happens in the science community, because people have pet projects or theories, and it becomes like dogma as opposed to science and evidence, and we need to have an open mind, you know, for information to change and move forward. So I try, because I'm kind of disgusted by that, I've seen it firsthand, I try and remind myself I need to be that way too. And in the area where I remind myself is in food addiction. It's driving me crazy right now. I've looked at a lot of the research. I actually finally got a copy of the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And you know, most of those questions are actually, in my opinion, measuring, are you a dieter? Because what they're indicating, these are behaviors or thoughts that happen when someone's chronically dieting. When you look at all the brain imaging studies that have been done, they don't have any exclusion criteria, or not much. For example, if someone is a subject and they've been chronically dieting and they look at their brain, guess what? Hunger is going to hit the reward center in the brain. You're going to see that happen, not because they're an addict, it's because that's what we have to survive. We can have conditioning like Pavlov's dogs. He taught his dogs how to salivate at the ring of a bell because they got a cookie each time. However, he also deconditioned them. Ring the bell, no cookie, they stop salivating. And then a study last year just blew me away because it was so cool. It was on music, and they identified people who respond to music, and they get what's, you know, the chills. Jennifer Lopez calls them goosies. If you watch American Idol, it's not tonight. There's actually a scientific word for it. It's called curls, like F as in Frank. It rhymes with curls, like curly hair. Anyway, they got these furry people. That's not a word. And what they did is they visually measured their brain with functional MRI, and they also measured dopamine, 2 kinds of studies, and they looked at what happened to their brains when they were anticipating music and when they heard music, and guess what? It hit the same centers that you see in cocaine euphoria in addicts, okay? A study a couple years ago showed that moms looking at their own babies smiling hits that same center. And so to me, it's too early in the game to be saying food is addicting. To me, it's fear-mongering. At the same time, we have to be open. Well, what if there's a certain thing? Now, here's what's fascinating. This area got a lot of validity when the Bart Hollow, who's now dead, out of Princeton, did I don't know why I told you that, but he got rats and made them addicted to sugar. You remember those studies? You should read them if you're not. You really should. Really. Okay. But what's really important is how he got these rats addicted to sugar. He starved them first. Now, to me, that's fascinating, because when you look at dieting and how it escalates weight gain, escalates binge eating, they've done studies on kids who diet, sadly enough. Kids who diet versus those who don't are 9 to 13-fold times higher likely to be a binge eater, you know? So this, to me, are we looking at addiction, or are we looking at the impact of chronic deprivation and or dieting? And so, anyway, I'm always trying to reel myself in to not not to be closed-minded, because someone could argue, oh, but you're with intuitive eating, so of course you wouldn't want to see, food addiction. And it's like, no, that's the cool thing about science, the cool thing about writing books. When the information changes, you write it differently. I'm not threatened by that. But my fear is that it's really fear-mongering. And I was in a debate I was in a debate recently with a PhD, and I was just appalled by his information. And when I would ask, where's your intervention data on this, on humans, his response would be, oh, it's in my 500 citations, which is BS. So when that kind of stuff happens, it's like, where's the science? It's great to have discussion. It's great to have a debate. I've got a dear friend who we see this differently, but we both respect each other's point of views. We know there's room for change as the research unfolds. But if we add more of this fear-mongering that we're one bite away from obesity, that we're addicted to foods, we just can't, oh my God, why even bother? I think that's problematic. We need to be empowering, that we can empower ourselves. At the same time, it is true, the food industry does do things to make food incredibly tasty and smelling good, all that kind of stuff. And the sizes are big. And but here's what's really cool. Okay, because something I've always said is portion size does not matter if you're an intuitive eater. It doesn't matter if they serve you a 20-pound steak, because you're going to stop when you're full. A study just came out in the fall on people who they trained in mindful eating at restaurants. And guess what? The purpose of the study was not to lose weight, but these trained mindful eaters in restaurants actually lost weight and enjoyed what they ate. So to me, it shows we have these abilities. I think it's harder today because we have so much distraction. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I got to present with a researcher from the UK. And my dad goes, if you have a thing for scientists, don't you? He's like, Dad, I have to interact with scientists. And of course I'm excited when I meet scientists. So anyway, but she's done a lot of research on, I know it sounds weird, on distraction and how people eat more when they're distracted. And for the longest time, I've had great difficulty with my patients with this concept, often called mindful eating. I've changed my terminology and it's helped. I now call it distracted eating, like distracted driving. People understand that when they're texting while driving or on the phone, they have the perception, they know exactly where they're going and they're safe as can be, and yeah, most of the time nothing happens, but we know from data that that's not the case. And the same thing with eating. If you're going to eat and watch TV at the same time, you're going to likely eat more, even though you're tasting it. Our brain can only focus on one thing at a time, even though our hands can do a million things at a time. And so part of the challenge right now is just getting someone to eat without distraction. That didn't used to be a difficult thing for me years ago, but now it's like, oh my God, you think I'm asking to go rob a bank? And the thing that cracks me up, they'll say, oh, what would I do? Eat? How does it taste? Are you enjoying it? Does it meet your, expectations? All those kinds of things. So it's like we have these abilities, but it's kind of getting lost. And at the same time, this doesn't have to be a perfect process. Just the other day, oh my God, I was eating breakfast on my way to work. I had whole wheat quesadilla, whole wheat tortillas and cheese, and I'm eating like pizza because I have a counseling session with someone in England, and I could not be late for that. And I was just cutting it too close. I thought, well, not pretty, but at least my body's being fed, and it's okay. It's what you do on a regular basis that becomes the issue. Now, related to this, then, for those of you who are interested in pursuing counseling or intuitive eating or working in eating disorders, it is incredibly important that if you have any of your own issues with eating and your body, that they get worked out, because you really can't take a patient further than you've taken yourself, and it's really a great disservice. For example, if a patient is sharing with you some fears they have about getting fat, and you're hearing this and you're getting afraid, you're not saying anything wrong, but they pick up on your anxiety, and it kind of validates what they're doing. And one thing I wish we had as a standard in our profession that we don't, and with counseling professions like psychologists and therapists and all that, they have what's called supervision, and that is therapists see their own therapist, because many times when you're working with people's issues, you get triggered yourself. And if you don't work on those, you're not going to be helping your patient very much. So actually, I've had a lot of therapists as clients, and I love it because they're very open and they're very honest. When they share, oh my God, I thought, So that's something I highly, highly recommend if you want to go into this. And you know what I'm seeing more and more, people pull me aside. Well, Evelyn, my body, and these are, psychologists and therapists working in the field. So I always respect when someone knows they have some stuff to work on. No one's perfect. We all have stuff to work on. Life's not perfect. I'm not perfect. In fact, along the perfect mantra that I give to my patients is this. We were designed not to be perfect. We have mutations in our body on purpose. Many good things happen from that. So does cancer sometimes. But for the most part, we're supposed to mutate. We're supposed to be imperfect. We usually get better because of that. And we need to start with our minds in that regard. I would also, for those of you interested in counseling, highly, highly recommend any kind of counseling courses that you can take, even specific kinds of things like motivational interviewing, cognitive behavior therapy. The biggest one right now, the three, dialectical behavior therapy. There's one I can always forget, it's ACT, it's like ACT, commit. I always forget the T. And then anything with mindfulness-based training is amazing. And this is the story I want to tell you. In the fall, this is an ADD story sort of too, because I signed up for this retreat, and I thought it was in San Diego because it was sponsored by UC San Diego. And the city was in a piece, and I was Poway. It turned out it was, I think, Petaluma, and I had to take a plane I didn't plan on doing. I wouldn't have done it because I was at another conference. I would have scheduled myself so tightly. But we had like 6 days, and our first night there, we get there in the afternoon, and we meet, and the leaders, one of them's like the highest level of Zen. She's not a monk, I forget the title, but she's also a physician. And just amazingly wise, and she lives in a monastery. Really, she does. And the first night, and the whole focus of this retreat is conscious living, mindful eating. I thought, okay, let's see if there's some stuff I can learn. And we find out we have to have silence, no communication, no body language, no eye contact until 2 o'clock the next day. Oh my God, this goes against my nature. I mean, I'm kind of telling, what am I going to do? And, I like tech, but I'm fine. I can go a Sunday without it. Actually, I have Sabbath internet Sunday. I try not to get on the internet unless I'm on a deadline. So anyway, we get back to our rooms, and I have my iPad. So I whip out Twitter. I felt like I was a cigarette smoker. Give it my last cigarette. I'm going off the grid. I'm off the grid. Where are you, Evelyn? Where are you? I couldn't believe it because I started to journal. And, it was tough not talking and expressing. That was very instructive. I found I was capable, but it was really scary. It's hard for me. And then another activity, not on that day, we had to do all this meditation, walking meditation. What was your thought before you turned? We had to do walking meditation back and forth like swimmers. What was your thought before you turned? And I learned, oh my God, I didn't even think I was turning. Stuff's so simple, it's so complex, And we were exhausted. Here we are doing nothing but meditating, and they're providing our meals, amazing meals, homegrown from the plant. Amazing. I'm exhausted because we're keeping it together. So we have all these practices we're doing, and this one we have to get into pairs, and I'm paired up with a psychologist, and after a while you get to know each other. I wasn't putting on makeup or anything, I'm here, okay. So this exercise, we are instructed to tell a story. One is the listener, and the other is the storyteller. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I got this. I'm an active listener. Got that. I do. I'm very good at that in my office. Not so much with friends, but in my office. It's really true. It's hyper-focus. So anyway, I'm with the psychologist. He decides to go first, and he tells me something incredibly revealing. And he looked at me and goes, Evelyn, you've got to give me like an aha or something. I thought, oh my God, I'm doing a great job. I give no response. Because, usually with active listening, you are doing some kind of response. Oh, you felt really sad when that happened to your little puppy dog or whatever. Yeah. So experiential activities, I think, are wonderful. Sometimes we get too much didactic, book learning and writing, and it all has its place. But to have the process is incredible. It's for that reason, actually, something else I'm doing that's brand new. I'm so excited. I'm actually doing a workshop that's actually work, where we're just going to be doing all kinds of intuitive eating processes, not doing PowerPoints or lecturing. It's like getting down dirty, rolling up your sleeves, and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So that's the thing I'd be looking for as students. Whatever it is that you think you want to get into, is I'd find a way to get actual practical experience. And here's a tip: if you can just embed this in your brain, it will help you. It'll help you get experiences. And that is when you contact somebody, instead of saying, oh my God, I really love your work, I'd like to intern for you, I'd like to shadow you, I'd like to volunteer. It's a nice sentiment, it really is, but it needs to be specific. Anytime someone has given me a specific proposal, I've usually said yes, because I know they have an idea. I'm not going to be having to figure out what to do, for somebody. So that's something to think about as you're approaching people, what that might be. So if you're looking at working at helping a hospital department out, getting to know what that department is and maybe what specifically you could do to be of service. And there's stuff you really pick up when you do that. The one exception, this is so not related, but I just have to say it because it still pisses me off to this day. It was I think it was Quantity Foods. I had to, and this is not me, other students, show up at 5 a.m., Long Beach School District, and we packed cookies for 3 hours. And to this day, I do not see the value of that. Packing cookies. Maybe it's to appreciate what people go through in that process. I don't know. But the point is, in that, I probably should have had the attitude, I had a grad student who actually I hired for a year. She helped me on my omega-3 book because I created a new database. And getting all the USDA data, I don't know if you've been on the USDA Nutrient Library database. Great stuff, but all the fatty acids are listed by numbers. 6322. That's my birthday molecule, but that's DHA, okay? Unless you know your fatty acid numbers, as a consumer's not going to know what that is, so we converted them into that. And what I loved about Tran, and she, by the way, graduated from here, and even though she was being paid, there was a crazy time in my life. You can't predict what's going to happen in life. My mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and so life was crazy. I was watching her dog with my dog, and a couple times, Tran has a master's degree, and I'd say, I really need you to walk my dog. I know you didn't go to school for this, but I can actually get more work done, and I'll never forget how wonderful her attitude was. So whether it's packing cookies or walking dogs, the attitude goes a long way. I wrote her a killer letter of recommendation, so in case you want to know.
Yeah, I think we're out of time.
Okay.